Alright, I wanted to make a video here that just kind of went over what I'm working on now. But to start, I have to back up some. This is a power supply, and when I was younger, my first train set was in the 70s, and it wasn't as nice as this, but it was a power pack. And basically, you just plug it into the wall. Everything's a big mess right now, and I apologize because it's not normally this bad. I got a pretty tolerant wife. On the back here, you would just attach the two wires to your track, and there'd be a DC electric motor in the model train or locomotive. So when you turn this dial, the more you turn it up, the faster the train would go around the track. And that's because it's receiving more DC power. And DC power is direct current, much like a battery, a AA or C or D. So when you turn that up, you get more voltage, DC power. It goes to the rail, and that's what makes the locomotive go faster or slower. It was great when I was a kid, but for the last about 25 years, they've come up with what's called digital command control. Because some of the drawbacks with this is if you want to put more than one locomotive on a track, every time you turn this up, they're basically both going to do the same thing if you're trying to run them independently. So, because it's pretty basic, it's just two motors getting DC power. And it would pick up the power directly from the track and just go right up into the motor, and there'd be typically one light up inside there. And that's the way it's been pretty much since the introduction of the hobby. So now we're going to switch over to another great big mess. This is a work in progress. Right now I am working on these coal cars. I'd grown up around railroads my whole life. And the B&O, C&O, and I don't have a chassis engine here, which is strange because that's my favorite. But there's a chassis caboose. The C, the inner part of the C, is a silhouette of a kitten. And that goes all the way back to the 30s. The mascot was a kitten. Okay, so this is not part of it. That's just for soldering. So what I have here is I just have an assembly line that I've been putting these cars together with. So let's switch over to what's called DCC. It's digital command control. So instead of that one little controller I showed you, now we have something like this. It's been called a controller, a cab, and this one's a plug-in type. They have wireless. I'll go ahead and turn on the power, and when the power's on, that little red light lights up. You can dial up. So instead of just having one control, this one has two. So you could do two different engines. You can actually type in multiple engines, and they'll just, if you release one, another one will just keep going at the same pace. So what's the biggest difference here? On these locomotives, the track is getting power all the time. And when I send any kind of command or signal, it also goes down the rails. Now inside each one of these locomotives, it still has a motor, just like the older ones. The difference is, and this is not the exact type, but it's something that's called a decoder. So you wire it where two leads pick up the power and communication from the rail, and then another two wires go out to the motor and lights, and if it's like this, sound. And what that does is these decoders, all four of these engines have 8 function decoders, and it allows you to really bring things to life here. I think if I get much deeper into it, it'll just get boring, but just showing the difference, it's day and night. So I'm going to go ahead and fire up these engines. All right, I just wanted to get a little bit closer here. So I have the address already dialed up, so you can control each one of these locomotives by an address. And since this one says 3801 on the side, it just makes sense to go ahead and program it 3801. But this one has 4 locomotives in a row, and in this case, I want them to work together. So I've put them into what's called advanced consist. So when I turn certain functions on, certain engines will do certain things. Right now I only have the headlights on, and then if I go over here, it's hard to see. I'll dim the lights here in a second. It turned on this light. That's called a ground light. That way they can look out the window and make sure the train is moving, because sometimes the wheels will slip. This one right here function, see, it turns on the lights on the steps at the bottom step and the walkway in the nose, and it does the same thing in the back. And then number 6 is the number boards, where that number is right up here. And in this case, it turns them on and off for all engines. It's set up and programmed that way. And the nose, you can see those are called class lights. Now I'm going to dim the lights for just a second. Okay. So with the lights dimmed, it gives a much better appearance of what everything looks like. I'm going to bring that more in front of it. You can see just how bright the headlight is. Now every time I work on one of these locomotives, because they don't come that way, I had to do a lot of work to get all these lights in. They come from the factory a certain way, and I'm kind of a perfectionist, so I go back and redo it the way I want it. All right, so now that we have our lights on, I'm going to go ahead and start it up. So each one of these locomotives have 3 small speakers. They call them mini cubes, and they're rectangular, which I'm used to speakers being circular, but this is a newer technology. So altogether there's 12 speakers here, so I can control the bell. Here's a horn. And then I'm going to go ahead and back up a little bit. You notice how the front headlight goes out, and then the back one is what turns on. All right. I don't have much room, so I'm going to change the direction. Now this time I'm going to apply the brakes once I get it rolling. And you hear that squeal, that's the brakes. And then this, you'll hear air. Yeah, it's an air let off. And it's very prototypical of what you'd find in the real world. So much more different than just the old-fashioned DCC system, because these have their own decoders that control sound, and you can control all these just by pressing the different buttons. Again, the bell, horn. There's over 20 different functions on this locomotive, and then I can go ahead and press number 6 and they'll shut down. And I'll go ahead and start turning off the lights. Okay, and that's all shut down. Okay, and then last are these coal cars, because B&O, C&O, and Chessie were known for hauling a lot of coal. I bought 60 of these models. Went ahead and applied number decals because there was only 2 numbered cars, and then the rest were unnumbered, and you just take decals and put them on there. This one was painted that way, but if I compare it to, I think that's when I put a decal on. I mean, again, I'm very particular, so I was very careful on how this all lining up everything. Anyway, they have taken sound and gone beyond just a locomotive. So in this case, this is a little, what they call a baffle. And on the other side of this, inside and down where those holes are, there's a speaker. These wheels pick up electricity, and it goes to this little purple decoder here. This on the other side, it basically just makes sure that the whole system gets power, because sometimes the track gets dirty and the sound would cut out, and that's not very realistic. So this buys you some time if you go over some rough, some dirty track. And then I've made just one of these so far, but these will drop into place, and on top of that will be like some foam, and then you paint on Elmer's glue and sprinkle it with, they make a artificial coal, and it'll look real. And I plan on doing that to all the cars, but there's only going to be, out of the 60, there's only 9 there are sound cars. So I'll give a quick demo of that, and that'll wrap it up. Okay, so it's on the track. And the way this is designed to work is supposed to be pretty simple. So what I'll do is plug in an engine. I'm going to call it 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't have an engine with that number, but I don't want to be competing with the sound of another engine. So we're just going to pretend that there's a engine up here, 1, 2, 3, 4. So once I have that in there, there's a reed switch on the side of the decoder, and you just take a magnet and you wait for that sound. Okay, now it's part of the train that the lead engine would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So when I start turning up the throttle, you get the clickety-clack and the flange squeal. There are some other sounds you can put in there as well. You can program it to, because this decoder's for just about anything that you could think of. Livestock, you can have it where you can hear like cows or sheep. Refrigerator cars, it would kick on and off, like the sound it makes when those come on. There's a lot of, well, refrigerator cars have to keep the contents cold. Okay, and then on this, it's kind of like the train when I hit the brake, when I hit F11. Now you can hear the brakes applied. And I've got a number programmed in there. And it's the same number that the locomotive has programmed in it. And it's called brake rate. So you want to make sure the locomotive and the car has the same brake rate number in it. And that way, when the engine comes to a stop, the cars stop that squealing noise because it's not rolling anymore, which is pretty ingenious. So that's pretty much it. That's about as short as I think I could make this. Let the air off. Okay. Now let's, I don't want it connected to engine 1, 2, 3, 4 anymore. So I just do the magnet thing again. And there's a wheel, hard to see, but there's a wheel right up in this upper corner. Every car has one. Yeah, that brake wheel. And what that does in the real world is it manually applies the brakes. So the last sound you heard was the brakes being applied. And at that point, engine 1, 2, 3, 4, it's not connected to it anymore. So if I turn the throttle up, this would make no sound. I know it's a bit ugly without the top on it, but like I said, I've got the plastic pieces I'll put over the top, and end up putting it's like a very, very dense foam. You've probably seen people dressed up for cosplay at conventions, things like that. And many times that's what it's made of. It may look like steel or something very strong, but it's just a very thick foam. And you can carve it and cut it up the way you want it. So if you can imagine, it would just be like some humps to it, and then paint on some elamers and sprinkle this coal on it, and then it'll drop right in, and it'll look real. In fact, I don't know if you just heard it. There's a little pop sound it made. The whole time I had this off the track, it was still running up until just a second ago. This back here keeps power in it, and that same little device is in every one of the engines as well, and then it just plugs into the back side of the decoder. So that's how it works with the locomotives or these cars. Everything goes to the decoder first, and it knows by address, so when I turn up the throttle or do something, I can see on the decoder will look for the address and basically say, is the command for me or someone else? This car, I just take the last 4 digits because that's as high as you can go. So this is 9806. And that's how I'll do all 9 of them, because they'll have different numbers on the end. But that's pretty much it. Now it's just a big job of rinse and repeat. And then when I have all that done, I've got a friend that has a big layout. The Chessie caboose back there does have sound in it as well. And the light on the end slowly flashes just like the real thing. So they've really taken this to the next level, and hope you found it interesting.